Chaile time. And welcome to this week's episode of Chaile Time. Toby, welcome to Chaile Time.
Zepo.
100, number 100.
Episode 100.
What a milestone. What a milestone.
Hey?
What a milestone.
100.
I know.
Hey?
It's called growth.
It's called growth, yes.
You see now,
See.
we even looking a bit fancy.
In the beginning we were like amateurs, but we had our hats on.
We still
our PPE hats, episode 1. So now they're back for episode 100.
Yeah, but we're still having them. Even though sometimes we take them off, but we're still having our heads on.
Yeah, so yes, yes, we developed quite a lot. I remember those early days. Hi, Tsepo. I remember our very first episode. Do you remember that very first episode? We were like, how do you do this? We had a big TV and we had a script. And when we practiced how to read the script, and we all know exactly what to say. And I think we were like halfway through the first episode. We said, shit,
this is not going to work.
This is not going to work. We took the TV away and we said, Tsepo, let's just shoot it out of the hip, man. And that's been the motto ever since.
I remember we struggled. We did a lot of cut. But we like, you know what, let's just do it. Because we live this every day of our lives.
You see, what we tell all the do's and the don'ts of what we experience in the workplace. So this is not necessarily theory that we read in a book. This is us going, day to day. This is also why sometimes sometimes we do classical broadcast or rebroadcast, or sometimes why you also not here is because we're actually out in the field experiencing this, and then we come and tell the story afterwards. So this is practical stories of what we experience.
Actually, it reminds me about 3 weeks ago, I attended to an event. You know I'm a DJ, right?
Yeah, I know you're a DJ.
Yeah, so
on weekends.
There was this event that I attended. So we went to the bar to try and buy some drinks. Then, because this thing is in my blood, I can't help it. I start asking the guy the prices, and he was touching there. I'm like, my guy, tonight you're not gonna make it. Where's your supervisor? The supervisor came, and I'm like, this guy, you must replace him. You must find someone sharp. This venue is gonna be full capacity. Over 5,000 people are gonna attend here. He's gonna mess up because you need to get someone who knows the menu, who knows the prices from on top of their heads. But
you're a qualified barman also, so you understand hospitality.
I understand the whole thing. But now,
but you mustn't be like that. It's like a dentist. When you meet a dentist in the shopping center, they're always looking at your teeth.
No. But the moral of the story is, I actually exchanged numbers with his supervisor, and guess what? Mm-hmm. He's getting me a gig somewhere to go and play because I was so sharp.
That's called networking.
So you see now, with this, we started because we were reading from a paper, but now we're doing it naturally.
Yeah, we just talk,
We just talk.
It just comes.
It's not scripted or anything.
And I remember at some stage, we always had these microphones.
Yes.
These microphones here.
And
your beard will scratch the microphone, then you're on the recording, will hear. And it's like, tip on your beard, man. Your microphone had to go lower and lower and lower. And then at some stage, the microphone started packing up. I suppose it was wear and tear. And we struggled with sound quality. But now, eerlikheid man, and then we just decided, let's bite the bullet and buy proper microphones to sort the sound. And I remember one of the subscribers sent me a message, well done on the sound. But that's how you develop, And we built this fancy studio, and but the previous studio, this is our third studio. So the previous studio we had a different setup, which was very simple.
Yes.
Then we went over to green. Everything was green screen.
Green, yeah.
So because we tried to be fancy or whatever, or try to get away cheaply, because there's no money coming in for this, We're doing this for free. We are known as the freebie people, you see. And then we started investing quite some money and built a nice podcast studio. And now it's getting nice.
But remember, when you're saying we're doing it free, and it's just to give light, to shed light to the people.
Just give back.
to saying the do's and don'ts inside your workplace, and then, opening their eyes where it's like now what we're going to be talking about later, which I don't want to dwell too much into it because we're going to unpack later. It's something that when you were sitting, I don't know, how did you think of this? But you were like, Tsepo, let's start a podcast.
I think, I've been doing labor law training for a couple of years now, and I think also, look, there's a marketing understanding also here from a brand management perspective or brand marketing perspective. At the end of the day, I think it's twofold. Number one is my genuine love for educating people, just giving back, and for us to talk about what we know. I think it's just bloody exciting. It's awesome, And then secondly, also, if for any business, if you want to have a business, you need to get yourself out there. And I'm giving some business advice here now. What I came to realize is that for me, this is my personal opinion, to a large extent, your traditional marketing platforms don't really work. I've seen, for instance, we've got a massive following on LinkedIn. If I put free content out on LinkedIn, everybody engage and thumbs up and whatever. But the moment I put an advertisement of our business services in there, nobody watch it. People don't really care about your business, But it's not, and I'm not judging them. It's just the way we are wired as humans. But what works is if you build a brand and people take notice, they won't think about you. But I always say, if they're hungry, they know where to get their bread from.
100%.
So the day will come when they have a need, and then they're like, Tsepo or Toby. But let's bring something to mind now. Tell a bit about your experience over the last, this is 2 years now almost now. You've told me many times where you will go on an airplane or at the CCMA and the commissioner will storm out. I know that voice. Tell a bit about your experience in terms of publicity for the Tsepo brand out there. That laugh, no, that's Zuma.
Even 2 weeks back, I was assisting a brother company. Most of the I always assist them here and there where they need my help.
Oh, yes. That's another law firm that we help out, yeah?
Yes. So I got there to their client, and then, but when I get there, I pose most as their employee. I'm from this company, 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And that manager looked at me like, come on, I know you. I watch you on your podcast. You and your friend Toby.
You're not from this company. You're from that company.
But she's like, I understand what is happening. So thank you for your help. You are very helpful. And then it's always nice having you around because you speak the languages that the people understand and those kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I found that owner, just to tell him, we're not there to steal your client. It is just like the emoji WhatsApp. It is what it is.
Yeah, so throughout this time, Mpumalanga went to a CCMA. I got my laughter just make someone get out of the hearing room and hear you say, hi, no, this one is familiar. You are from Chaile time. On a plane the other day, the lady looked at me and said, I know you. You work with Toby. I saw you on your podcast, so it shows that,
And you had a fly safe story also.
Yeah, that's the one that I'm talking about, the lady who saw me in a flight. But now, the most interesting one is...
Yeah?
You remember the HR conference?
The most recent one?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
I was not part of that conference.
Yeah, you were in Durban doing CCMA stuff.
On the second day of the conference, I had an arbitration, but I finished early. Then I decided to go and join.
You came, yeah. That was the time when we started drinking the red wine.
Yes.
That's when you arrived.
Yes, that's when I arrived, when everyone was
on the right time,
mingling and talking, and everyone was so excited to see me. Wow.
Yeah.
It's nice to put the voice on the face and meet you in person. And they were so excited to see me. Then I'm like,
you're a celebrity. But what's quite interesting is what's interesting in this podcast, I mostly take the lead.
Yes.
And you host it, but you're the one gaining the popularity. People just, maybe it's because you're black or something. I don't know. That's South Africa for you, isn't it? But listen, I also have a story to tell. Not as many as you, but I had one incident. I was at the CCMA Johannesburg, this is some months ago, and I was representing a client, and suddenly, now you sit in the reception, and while you're talking to a client, somebody pulled on my shirt here. And there was a Chinaman. You, Chaile, please help me, you, Chaile. And I'm sitting there, and this guy, he was there for a misconduct dismissal. He was there for con op, and I know, obviously he knows nothing. And there's this case law that came out that the CCMA rules, they're not always aligned with law. The law say you can object against conduct, but the LRA doesn't give a timeline. Where the CCMA rules say something like 14 days before the time you need to, or 7 days before the time you need to file your objection.
Yes.
So I just told him, I wrote a piece of paper, I object, and gave it to him and said, listen, go give it to the commissioner. Because obviously I couldn't help the guy at that stage. So, but anyways, today's going to be a bit of a long podcast, so the people must just hang in there.
Yeah, man, it's a milestone, so they must just be lenient with us.
Tsepo.
Okay, before we get there,
Yeah.
what's happening in the world, especially in South Africa? Let's not talk about Charlie Kirk, because it's
Look, Charlie Kirk, I didn't know about him until he unfortunately passed away. Obviously, because I was in the media and I went to read some of his stuff. I'm just saddened that we're starting to live in a dangerous world where you disagree with people and you start killing them, each other. Eh? It's a bit weird, eh?
for your opinion
For your
or
opinion.
for your views. You call it
But that is
opinion?
something that is nice about South Africa still. Look, obviously we have a lot of crime and murder, so I'm not saying we don't have political killings, because we do.
Yes.
But our political killings is a bit different. You'll sit in a restaurant, someone will drive past with a motorbike and just shoot you. You don't have a full stadium and somebody shoots a speaker, you know. That you get in America. You open your mouth and they shoot you from the audience. But you know, one thing, and I mustn't say it like this because now it sounds disrespectful, but I think you get to a stage in America where if you're a speaker in a live an event like this, you can't sit or stand in front of a high building. Because, no, seriously, even Trump, they tried to assassinate him
Yes.
twice. You know, so I think speakers will start getting scared, you know, if you're 200 meters from you, there's a high building. Because you don't know who's hiding on the roof there.
So the things that it's amazing how the things that we see on movies and series now, it's literally happening in America. Yeah, but I only saw.
So it's nice here in South Africa. We don't
Yeah,
kill
no.
the leaders. We
Yeah,
don't.
no, South Africa.
But then again, you do get political killings, but it's mostly councillors and so, you know.
It's most because
the
of
smaller guys, yeah.
power and greed and whatever.
But the big guys don't get shot, and I hope they never do, you know. I mean,
So did you hear what your president said to the councillors?
Chip, you're opening doors here, but I like it. Our president, Mr. Ramaphosa, you say.
He's got an own goal.
Let me correct you. Now, for those who you don't know, the president this week acknowledged in some kind of ANC meeting.
Yes.
He told the councillors that the ANC must go learn from the DA, because the DA municipalities are always run better. They always get better audit results. But this is why I will never be able to be a politician. A few years ago, our ward councillor was a DA ward councillor. And we had a WhatsApp fight with each other, and eventually he blocked me. And you know why? Because he went on about the ANC leadership and the ANC on and on, all the negative things. And you know what? He's also simultaneously an outspoken Christian. And sometimes politics and Christianity just don't mix.
Yeah,
They're like
clash.
water and
They
oil.
clash.
And me as a person, I always imagined myself, and I probably don't know what I'm talking about, but that's how I feel. If I were to be a member of parliament, let's say as an example and any other party who's not the ANC, as an example now, I'll be the first to congratulate the ANC if they do things right, or other parties if they do things well. I'll probably be fired. Let's say I was a DA MP or something like that, and I go speak in the front. I'll be like Ramaphosa. I will thank the ANC for setting us free from apartheid, and even though there's a lot of crap still, look, I'll be honest. I will say, yeah, but what about the potholes and the electricity, all the shit too. But I'll acknowledge where it's due. And people don't do that. So I actually, I'm like Ramaphosa. Well done. Because you know what? We do need to go learn from the DA.
I know
we don't agree everything with the DA, but they do manage well.
That's why you love Juju. I know you.
I think I don't like him, but I do love him.
Yes.
It's a matter of there are some things he say that make sense, But I don't think there's a perfect politician.
But it's not only Ramaphosa. Even Gwede Mantashe was like, you know what? The councillors, what they know is to dance. Only to dance. They're not working. So it is a view, I think, from the NEC that people are sleeping down there.
But you know what I like? And we need to... People are very negative of our future and whatever. But maybe it will be negative. Maybe it will be positive. I think there's an opportunity to learn. Because if you look at America, there are 2 parties only. Here's many.
607.
The thing in South Africa is we sort of keep you on your toes. So maybe because of GNU and the ANC losing power, now even the ANC is saying, listen, we need to fix the bloody potholes. Because you're not all powerful anymore, you see.
Yeah.
So maybe as the South African project, hopefully it will get better because we're actually now starting to raise the foundation. Say, listen, maybe we shouldn't be corrupt. Okay, maybe we should manage better. That's a good space to be in.
But I worry because we are having more political parties. It means people are power hungry out there. Everyone is hoping that at some point I'm going to be in power, in charge, and then.
But that's part of human condition. It's always like that. Whether you're in politics or religion or wherever, people want that. That's part of our human makeup. We want power. It's just the way it is.
Let's talk about politics. It's fine. Let's focus on.
No. I've got one more thing. I need to get it off my heart.
Okay.
Our Honorable Deputy President Paul Mashatile.
Okay.
He was asked apparently. That's why I read in the media in Parliament, I believe. Is it not time to scrap BE policies because it's a failed policy? And you know what he said? There are many successful black businesses in South Africa. That's why we should strengthen BE.
So are they powerful because of BE? All of them? Is that what he's saying?
Well, I personally, I don't know if you actually understand what he said, but for me it's an insult. Because it means that if you take BE away, black people won't be successful.
That's what I'm asking.
So I'm like, you could tell the Springbok black players, they are there because of BE. They're going to flip and do something to you. They're the best in the world.
Yeah.
They're there because of how good they are. It's just, I think the current codes serve this purpose, but it's now 30-odd years later. We need to revise it. I think it expired in its current form. To say that black people are successful because of their skin color. I mean, some of the best lawyers I know happen to be black. And they are not good because of BE, they're good because of the fact that they're good.
There's a lawyer, his name is Ngugai Toby.
Huh?
I think he was employed by Netflix to deal with a recent case. You know?
Okay.
A company from Holland appointed a South African lawyer to deal. And then he won the case. It was...
Tell that man,
brilliant.
You are really good now because of the color of your skin. Seriously?
No.
Maybe he's just good.
No, he's brilliant.
Maybe he's just brilliant. So will Mr. Mashatile really say if you take BE away, suddenly all the successful black people are suddenly going to become unsuccessful? It's an insult. But I don't want to make this podcast about BE, but still, the current coach was important. But we need to move on. And I'm not saying scrapping it.
Yes.
That's me, to be speaking. Transformation is important. But I want to see structural and systemic transformation. I want to see Shoshonguve being uplifted. Fans like Mamelodi, brilliant example. There's a lot of poverty in Mamelodi, but they've got this beautiful, world-class shopping center. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We need to uplift our communities. And you know what? We happen to have most people in this country is black. If we uplift society structurally and systematically, black people will happen automatically to be the beneficiaries of it. What does it matter? Why are black people so fixated on whites? What? We're the minority. Why do you care?
Are you sure you don't want to go into politics?
Tsepo, on my index here, my agenda here, I still want to talk about privilege. Okay, let's leave it. You mentioned before we started something about white privilege. But anyway.
No, but you can check. Everyone who deemed to be successful, I don't know what determines success, but whenever they speak their minds, you are told that you're speaking from the point of privilege.
You're talking white just now?
Yes.
In reality, I grew up as an orphan. My parents died young. I had zero inheritance, nothing. My first job was a petrol boy. You know what? So are you saying Black South Africa won't listen to my opinion just because, I don't know, there's this illusion, all whites are wealthy or whatever?
Yeah, you are the CEO of Effectus Harmony. You're speaking from the point of
Okay, but there are black CEOs too.
What are we talking about today?
We must one day make a politics podcast and get it off the chest, Chaile.
Then we need to invite a politician to come in.
Mr. Ndlozi from the EFF, do you think he will come?
Mr. Ndlozi is hosting a radio show.
I'm sure he will have 1 hour for us somewhere in his busy schedule.
We must try. We must try. Let's reach out.
Yeah, we must. Yeah, we must. Okay, so people ask us to talk about the new amended Code of Good Practice, dismissals. So this one will be the amended Code of Good Practice, Part 1. And we're specifically going to focus today on small business and the misconduct procedure. Now, previously with the previous Code of Good Practice in terms of Schedule 8. So we talk about Schedule 8 now of the Code of Good Practice, okay? The misconduct procedure you used to find in Schedule 8, subsection 4. Now you find it in Schedule 8, subsection 11, okay?
Yes.
So we're going to break it into 2 parts, and then next week we will talk about the other parts, the incapacity dismissals, retrenchments, and they also now got illegal strikes and those kind of things. So we'll be talking about that, but I think today we'll be laying the foundation in terms of what's the context of this whole new code. But anyway, Chaile, you've studied the codes. Some questions?
How do we determine a small business? How do we know that now this is a small business? How the determination of saying this is a small business?
Yeah. So I think what's important for us to understand is just the actual context. The context in which this code must be interpreted, because that will then lead into this whole issue about small business.
So the law is not black and white, straightforward.
Chaile, this is the thing. Labor law is not black and white. It operates in a grey space. That's why a lot of lawyers don't like labor law, because you don't have a straightforward yes or no. It's always maybe. It could be. People ask me, can we hire new staff after you've retrenched staff? The answer is always yes and no. It depends on the circumstances.
Can I employ someone and just put him on a 12 months probation? Anyway,
so to get to your question, what is a small business? I think it's important for us just to go through the context, the setting.
Yes.
With other words, the setting in which the entire code must be interpreted. And there's some valuable principles here, subsection 2 says, for instance, the code is intentionally general. Each case is unique, and departures from the norms established by this code must be justified in proper circumstances. There's that grey word, circumstances, okay? For example, the number of employees employed in an establishment may warrant a different approach. So that's step 1, key 1. You have to look at the circumstances. Each case will still be determined based on its own context, its own circumstances. And to some extent, or to a large extent, for instance, the number of employees you have is relevant to that determination. And the reason being is, now a small business, dotted line a bit, it's not numbers. We're all looking for numbers because this code doesn't define what a small business is. So you have to read with purpose and between the lines, because if you read this section, subsection C3 deals specifically with small business. If you read it properly, the answer is embedded in there, but it's not clear. It's not less than 10 employees, less than 50 employees, or whatever the case may be.
Because when I was reading, I was like, maybe it will indicate, when you say small business, you're talking about a number of employees. When you're talking about a small business, you're talking about maybe a turnover that the business is making annually.
But you see, labor disputes, there's a key. Now, there are many keys, but probably the most important key from a procedural perspective is that each case must be judged or determined taking the totality of the circumstances into consideration. Now, what this code has done, holistically now, it's really not a new code. There are some things in there that's new, okay? But in principle, it's not a new code. So what happened here is you get the law, or an amendment of the law like we have now. So when the first code was drafted, you have the code, boom, there it is, 1995, there's a code of good practice. Who knows how to actually interpret it and apply it? Nobody knows. Now it goes through a process of litigation in the courts. In other words, companies and employees suing each other, you see. Now 5 years later, 10 years later, now you get a CCMA commissioner who will have his own understanding, his own interpretation and application. And then over time, then there's a review, and then the judge say, no, the commissioner don't know what he's talking about. And then eventually some matters go, and not all matters. This is why it's difficult sometimes, because most of the time a matter will go to CCMA level only. So you will only have the view of the commissioner. And I'm sure there's a Labour Court judge in his house sipping on his tea like, please bring it to me, because that commissioner is screwing up, please bring it to me. But it's not happening. Now, sometimes it goes to the Labour Court. Then the judge will say, man, that commissioner was wrong. And then it stops there. And then the Labour Appeal Court judge sits at home, please bring it to me, because even the Labour Court judge is screwing up. Then some cases go to the Labour Appeal Courts. And after 10 years or 20 years, then the legal people can say, you know what, safely say this is what it means. That's how it develops. But now, so this code, what it does is, it simplifies the understanding of the interpretation of it. So as we now know as consultants or whatever the case may be, we know how the courts interpret the Code of Good Practice. They've just now put some of those interpretations into the new code. So they're explaining it better so that a normal person actually knows how the courts are actually interpreting this. Now, obviously, there's a lot of court cases. Not everything is in here, but it does simplify the understanding and the interpretation of the old codes. So this is the old codes on steroids. It's an old code simplified and explained in a way that we already know. It's like previously they don't know what we know, but now they do.
Now they know.
Now people will ask us always, so how do you do a hearing? Then we will interpret it for them through the lenses of the courts. Now this code, give it to them the interpretation in a simplified, very short, summarized version. Okay. So, but anyway, so now they are saying, for instance, the number of employees is relevant. So why is that relevant? The reason being is, some small employers, they won't have operations managers, and they won't have HR managers. Now, for instance, let's say 2 small companies, whatever small may mean. Let's say 2 companies with 10 staff each. The one company's it's a plumbing company, it's the boss and 9 artisans. All they can do is fix taps, leaking taps. So there's 10 staff, they don't have an HR department. So why must they now get or make use of the services of fancy and expensive lawyers to come do hearings and so? But you get the other company, they also have 10 staff. One is an HR manager, one is an operations manager. They can do hearings.
They can do it.
So it depends on the circumstances. And that's why they say, okay, the number of employees are relevant. Now, government has been on a drive to help job creation through entrepreneurship. So what government did in the last couple of years now, and you see this in the Employment Equity Act too, they are now saying in the Employment Equity Act, listen, companies that must do affirmative action, are those companies employing more than 50 staff, or companies that their annual turnover is above a certain threshold. But now as from the 1st of January 2025, they removed the threshold. So only companies above 50 must do affirmative action. Companies below 50 can employ whoever they want. So they're making it easier for people to start businesses. Hopefully this is one way of how to support the development of small business in South Africa. And this code is the same thing. They are now saying here in the next one, this code places a premium on employment justice, the efficient operation of an employer's business, and the expeditious resolution of disputes. So they are saying, listen, we're looking at the business. We don't want to overly burden SMEs with labor procedures.
Yes.
Because let's say, for instance, you're at your home, your nanny, must you, if she steals something, must you not get a fancy lawyer that charges you 6,000 an hour just to come and chair a hearing? The government is in the legislature saying, no man, this doesn't make sense. We are putting too much stress on small businesses. I still want them to get rid of we small businesses having to do that. Mr. Ramaphosa, that is a problem for small businesses. Because now we need fancy accountants to do that maze of work for us. Anyway, so they are supporting this. They are saying small businesses, you don't necessarily have the infrastructure to have a court case every time somebody steals something. But important, it still speaks of employment justice. And it says this code, the key principle in this code is that employers and employees should treat one another with mutual respect. And that's always been that way. So there's no getting away from having some kind of investigation, even if you're a small employer. It is just the way you do it. And I suppose that we're going to get to small business now, okay? I suppose you don't necessarily, if you're a small business, and small is not less than 10 staff, small businesses is depending on your operation, your infrastructure, your capacity, whether it is reasonable to expect of you to have fancy hearings. If it is not, and this is a massive grey space, because you're going to get a company now with 1,000 staff who's got many operations managers and legal staff, whatever. We're a small business, we don't have the capacity to do that, so you're going to get messed up at the CCMA. But anyway, so that's all the cases that's coming now. But if you are small and you genuinely, based on the totality of your circumstances, it's not reasonable for you to be involved in lengthy, costly investigations, then I suppose a simple audi alteram partem rule will be sufficient. You and I having a discussion, having a talk, over a cup of coffee, and I suppose based on the balance of probabilities right there, I fire you.
Then you fire me, then I know a guy because he's a member of an official from Kumsha somewhere. And then the member of Kumsha goes and represents it at the CCMA and they want to interpret the law wrongly. But because you don't know, not aware of these things, you can easily fall into a trap.
Yeah, look, especially now the codes are out, there will be a time, probably 10 years, that we will really know. But now there's a lot of grey spaces, because now I can see a lot of, what your example now I can see a lot of lawsuits at the CCMA or Bargaining Council where the actual dispute is about whether you qualify as a small business or not. Because the employer is now going to say, I don't have to do a hearing because I'm a small business. The union comrade is going to say, hold on, but you have an operations manager. You honestly want to tell me you can't have a bit of a fair procedure there?
And you have Google lawyers, and then you have this.
Yeah, so
I know
the code. A lot of companies are going to try to get away from this now. So it's going to be very interesting. But I take my hands off for government or the legislators trying to make it a bit more easier. And you know what? A lot of this for us is not new. And I'm going to give an example also in terms of a case law. Yes. They are just saying here what we already we knew for all the years already, but they're making it simpler. And yeah, very important, to make matters easier to understand. Okay, subsection 4. Yeah. So they're trying to simplify it and to try to make it easier to understand. And yes, then there are 2 or 3 things in there that's actually new. And we're going to deal with probably with 2 of them. We're going to see now when we talk about the actual fair procedure in terms of a misconduct dismissal. There's something new in there that shouldn't be an issue, but it's going to be a Mursa issue. I'm telling you now. It's going to be huge, in my opinion, and I'm like watching this space. But before we get there, let's talk small business.
Okay.
So your question really was, what is a small business? Okay, so let's just read small business. Subsection 3. This code should not be interpreted as requiring small businesses to comply with obligations that are not practical or feasible for their operation. First of all, important, it doesn't say they don't have to follow the code. They are saying the code is subject to, it must be practical in terms of their business, and secondly, it must be feasible for their operation. So you can't now say because I'm small, I don't have to follow the procedures or the codes. But you just interpret it, that you apply the codes and the procedures through the lenses of your situation. So it's giving a bit of an advantage, or it favors employers a bit. And now employers can say, that's unfair. Because here it gives them small businesses like us. Now, we don't qualify as small businesses in this context because we can do a hearing. But probably if you have to look at size or whatever, okay? I don't technically, if I were to qualify, it will benefit us that we, from a practicality perspective, I don't necessarily have to go through the whole duty, you see, the whole process. So it sort of favors the employer. But really you need to be sure you're on the safe side as to the interpretation of small employer. You're burning to say something.
You gave us stats of how many cases are done per year at CCMA.
It's thousands, I can't remember. But
about 400,000 per year.
I can't remember,
like
it's a lot.
I think it's going to double now. Watch the space. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, let's see. Let's see. So first of all, the small businesses, there's no running away from the codes. It is just the application of the codes, the procedures. It must be practical for you, so it's less burdensome for you, which is great. Okay. Number 2, any person determining the fairness of a dismissal should take into account, in addition to any other guidelines set out in this code, the circumstances in which small businesses operate. Now, people will say this is new. No, it's not. The courts have for long held that disputes must be determined based on the totality of circumstances anyway. And that's always been one of the key issues. You look at the circumstances of the employee and you look at the circumstances of the employer. So they're taking what the law say and just put it and codified it. So they explain it to you now. But this is not new. It's always been that way. It was just not written pertinently in the old codes. Number 3, and this is another key. Yeah. So the one key of identifying a small employer, those for which these procedures won't be practical or feasible. The second key is this one. For example, small businesses cannot reasonably be expected to engage in time-consuming investigations or pre-dismissal processes while at the same time keeping the business going. It should also be borne in mind that small employers do not have human resource departments staffed by people with skills and experience in these matters. So that is a key. So I will typically say small employer is somebody, first of all, that probably don't have a lot of staff, because, I don't think the issue is how many staff you have, but the reality is the more staff you have, then you'll typically start having levels of management and supervisors, staff who are more trained in how to deal with disputes. Okay, and that's the second key in your workforce. If you don't have people that actually that sort of are experienced, not qualified, experienced in dealing with disputes, then you will probably be qualifying as a small business. And also another key is there will probably not be an HR department. But it doesn't mean now that a company who doesn't have an HR department, they qualify as a small business now, because you may have a supervisor there or a manager who is experienced in dealing with disputes. Then the unit's going to say, but listen, that guy, I'm sure he can chair a hearing. So each case judged on its own merit. So a small business, just in a nutshell, a business where time-consuming investigations is not practical for the operation, because you're not going to close a business down just to investigate disputes. And secondly, from a staffing perspective, they don't necessarily have the experience in the workforce to deal with these kind of matters. But that's a grey area now. What does experience mean? Is it somebody that don't have a brain?
No.
Or is it somebody that don't have a qualification?
Somebody who has been exposed and has got knowledge in
fairness, in making a fair decision.
No.
In my mind, we don't know. That's why I say, we'll see in 10 years time what the courts say. But in my mind, a supervisor that gives instruction, that probably give a warning, that person can chair a hearing. Because now remember, you don't need a lawyer to chair a hearing. You need someone that can make a decision, a fair decision.
And then they can apply their mind I read somewhere that in progressive, that, but I've given you so many warnings. I know that you've been.
If you can give a warning, you can chair a hearing, Chaile.
Thank you.
That's how simple it is.
Thank you.
So anyway, now let's just go through Schedule 8, subsection 11. This is the fair procedure for a misconduct hearing. Now, the undertone here, or the foundation here, I want to use an example here quickly, where the old codes created the impression, even wrongfully so, that a hearing, first of all, there must be a hearing, and secondly, this hearing is likened to a criminal trial. You know, when you go to some companies, they want you to dress with your suit and tie, and it's a very formal process. Opening statements, evidence in chief, cross-examination, re-examination, mitigating, aggravation, closing arguments, like ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. And that's how the old Schedule 8.4 was interpreted. Now, what we knew, which they didn't know, was the following. The landmark case dealing with fair procedure in South Africa was Averill Elizabeth Home for the Mentally Handicapped versus CCM and others in 2006 already. Now, we will read that and be like, we know the HR, many times when we do hearings, we play the theater. If you go to a corporate, we do the Rolls-Royce hearing.
Yeah,
but most of the times, we do hearings how? We pitch up, we ask employers, what do you say? Employee, what do you say? Right. Go back, write a report, you dismiss, or warning, or whatever the case may be. Very simple. Then the HR manager will say, that wasn't the proper hearing. Why? Because some HR manager previously told them it must be the Rolls-Royce version. It's never been the case. Averill in 2006 already clarified this. Yeah. Now the new code say, you don't need a criminal trial. Let me show you something. So, the Labour Court held a significant departure from the criminal justice model that was developed and applied under the 1956 LRA, which likened a workplace disciplinary inquiry to a criminal trial. So, in 1995, they did away with that. Van Niekerk AJ found that the rules relating to procedural fairness introduced in 1995 do not replicate the criminal justice model of procedural fairness. With reference to the explanatory memorandum that accompanied the draft Labour Relations Bill, the court held, there is no place for formal disciplinary procedures that incorporate all of the items of a criminal trial, including the leading of witnesses, technical and complex charge sheets, requests for particulars, the application of the rules of evidence, legal arguments, and the like. That's how it's always been. They just didn't know what we know. You see. Then it continues with reference to the Article 4 of the ILO Convention 158 on the termination of employment. The court held, when the code refers to an opportunity that must be given by the employer to the employee to state a case in response to any allegations made against that employee, which need not be a formal inquiry, it means no more than that there should be a dialogue and an opportunity of reflection before a decision is taken to dismiss. Now, interesting is if you look at code Schedule 8.11 now, the new code, it starts off by saying the purpose of a fair procedure is to ensure a genuine dialogue and an opportunity for reflection before any decision is taken. It's a copy and paste of the ILO Convention. You see, it's what we always knew. They just simplify the code now to say, listen, this is how it really should be. Because the legislature, they realized after 30 odd years that people don't understand a hearing. It's actually a very simple process. Okay, a fair procedure is one in which, now most of this code for fair procedure misconduct dismissal is exactly the same it's always been. Yeah. The essence is the same. But there is one tellingly difference here. There's actually two important ones. So a fair procedure is one in which an employee has been given an adequate and reasonable opportunity to respond to the allegation of misconduct. Then the following one, we're going to debate this one now. But I first want to debate something else quickly, okay? So let me read this one. An investigation or inquiry does not have to be formal. Its nature should be appropriate to the circumstances, including the type of allegation and the nature and the size of the employer. 4. Usually before a decision is taken to dismiss, there's another one, there's a third one. The employee should be, number 1, notified of the allegations of misconduct, preferably in writing. Same as always, okay? Given an opportunity within a reasonable period of time to prepare and make representations on both the misconduct allegations and the appropriate sanction. C, allowed the assistance of a fellow employee or a trade representative, still the same, where reasonably possible, provided with the opportunity to converse in a language that the employee is comfortable with. And then it goes on. Allegations of misconduct should be made available or explained in sufficient detail to allow the employee to understand them. It's not written like that in the old code, but the courts have clarified that long time ago. An employee should, charges are sometimes too vague, but the key is that the employee understand the charges. So even if charges were vague, if the employee understood it, no problem.
That's why the comrades are still hammering. Even today, I'm like, the comrades are still like, but the charge is too vague.
Yeah.
The charge, they love that.
They love that. But the charge sheet will just say theft. It is a problem. Because if I'm a habitual thief, I wouldn't know what you know. Are you charging me for what I stole yesterday or last week? I won't know. But if you had a conversation, and I do know, so in a hearing, when I chair the hearing, I will ask the employee, okay, it just says theft, but do you know what this relates to? If he says yes, then what's the problem?
Actually, there was an award on my favor earlier this year, whereby, in terms of procedure, the commissioner said the charge was vague and he agreed with the applicant. But looking at the circumstances and everything in terms of substance, they ruled in my favor.
But that's always the risk.
Yeah.
That's why they say here it must have sufficient detail. Okay. Number 6, in exceptional circumstances, if the employer cannot reasonably be expected to comply with these guidelines, the employer may dispense with some or all of them. It should, however, be recognized that the employer may be obliged to justify non-compliance if the employer refers to dispute about the procedural unfairness of the dismissal. It's always been that way. It's the same in the old codes. Discipline against a trade union representative or an employee who is an office bearer or official of a trade union should not be instituted without first informing and consulting the trade union. Same as always. There are 3 things here I want to highlight.
Okay.
The 2 easier ones before we get to the big one. There's one thing here that's new. There's no more absolute right to an interpreter. It says 11(4)(d), where reasonably possible. That's new. Provided with the opportunity to converse in a language that the employee is comfortable with. It's no more you have a right to have interpreter. So now, what does reasonably possible mean? Now remember, you did a hearing for 10 people the other day. I think it took you 3 days to go through 3 different interpreters.
Yes.
Because they were never happy with the interpreter.
Yes.
So this will now allow you as a chairperson to say, you know what? No more interpreters. Let's continue. What language is your contract of employment? Did you sign it? Yes. You understand English. Let's go.
Because it went on an extent that they didn't even understand the notice that was put on the notice board.
But understand the contract and all the policies.
Anyway.
And understand the WhatsApps too. Anyway, the second thing here, and this is an interesting one. 11(4)(b) for Benin. The employee should be given an opportunity within a reasonable period of time to prepare, that's fine, and make representations on both the misconduct allegations, which is fine, that's always true, but this one is new, and the appropriate sanctions. So now it seems like you're going to have to also ask the employee, so what result do you think you must get? What sanction do you think you must get? I don't know if I'm interpreting this correctly. I'm just saying there it is. It says that now. The employee must be given an opportunity to make representations on the appropriate sanction, not just whether he's guilty or not. So just like you ask the employer, what outcome do you want to see? Maybe a dismissal or final warning. You need to ask the same to the employee. If I find you guilty, sir, what outcome do you think, sanction do you think I should give you? Now maybe I'm talking nonsense and in 10 years we will know. But here it is. But the elephant in the room, 11, number 3, subsection 3. So it says any investigation or inquiry does not have to be formal. So there you have it. The word inquiry has never been there. Now the word inquiry is there. So now you're going to have a lot of disputes, Well, this is a bit of a gray area. How do you interpret an investigation or inquiry? Does it mean an investigation means it must be an inquiry? Or does it mean the employer can do either an investigation, whatever that means, or an inquiry? So you're going to have the one employer saying, but listen, I can do either an investigation. So let's say I've got 1,000 employees, a lot of HR managers and legal people, but still here it says, I'm not a small employer, no problem. So I need to follow the code. The code says I can do an investigation or an inquiry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to investigate, I'm going to phone you, you're fired. I'm going to WhatsApp you, you're fired. It says investigation. What does it mean? Now, in the old codes, we know that's not what it meant. Okay? It meant that you need to follow the whole process. Okay? But this is where the ambiguity comes in. Or does it mean you must have an inquiry now? Because the whole code sort of supports the idea, depending on the context, the circumstances, the number of staff, you don't necessarily have to have an inquiry. But here it says you need to have an inquiry.
Hey.
But now, I can tell you how I see it.
Okay.
And I'm raising this. Some people will say, oh, but it's obvious to me. Okay, maybe it is obvious. But, when it comes to litigation and you have to pay the R500,000 out in compensation, then it's suddenly not so obvious anymore, okay? So, the old codes always said an investigation. The investigation was always subjected to the actual process in the rest of this provision, okay? They just put inquiry in because remember in the beginning they said they simplified the interpretation of it, and now you use words. They've put in words which is commonly used, but which wasn't found in law. Like for instance, a dismissal for operational requirements. They say in the beginning we now define or we classify it as a retrenchment. And I think this is the same thing here. They're just saying an inquiry because that's what it actually practically always meant. So it's always been that you need to do an inquiry. Okay. So this is not a leeway for an employer just to do an investigation and then fire you over WhatsApp. Unless if you may be a small employer. That can be. Okay? But now remember, a small employer don't necessarily have to follow this specific provision. But for those who do, you won't get away with only an investigation. You phone the other manager, what's the situation with this employee, and then you just send him a WhatsApp. I've now investigated, and now you WhatsApp him and say you're fired. I don't think it's trying to say that. So it is not either do an informal investigation where you're going to get away with murder, or an inquiry and you choose which one you're going to follow. It's the same thing in my opinion. Zepo?
It's going to be a long 10 years, eh?
It's going to be a long 10 years.
Yeah, but this is quite straightforward, if I may say.
Yeah, I think it is straightforward.
But I know that we're going to have challenges because,
But at the end of the day, they just apply the interpretation of the law and how it was developed through the courts. The only difference really is it's a bit more easier for small employers, and that's aligned with the thinking these days, making business easier for small businesses. And you'll see the same trend with the Employment Equity Act as we alluded to. But anyway, next week we can continue with part two. Yeah, so anything else?
No. Any jobs?
Oh, job review. Yeah,
Yes.
So now it is job review, and we have some fresh vacancies available. Anyway, thank you, Tsepo. Thank you for joining us on this.
Thank you.
Thank you for being available for episode 100.
What's that? What does that mean?
It means you're here.
And I'm still going to be here next week for part 2.
Oh, really? I hope so. You're not flying somewhere.
No, I'm still going to be here for part 2. Thank you for watching. Please. We don't normally do this, please.
Oh, yes.
Like,
we have 496 subscribers, and we want to hit that 500 mark, man. So do us a little favor and just say subscribe.
Subscribe and like. Thank you very much. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good morning, everyone. Let's have a look at some of the vacancies posted nationwide on our Harmony People's Network this week. First up, Lebalelo is on the lookout for a dedicated and knowledgeable safety officer to join their team in Burgersfort. Kagwadia Madiba is advertising for a finance administrator in Limpopo, and Intellergy is seeking an operations manager. Last but not least, a well-established IT/ISP company based in Cape Town is seeking a second-line mid-level network engineer. For the full information of the mentioned positions, how to apply, as well as more available positions, Find the vacancy link in the description. You will also find a link to a useful video on how to compose a winning CV and have a successful interview. Tune in again next week for more Harmony vacancies.